Okay, so I'm going to introduce Alfa Demmellash. And there's no way in 30 seconds or so that I could possibly tell you about all of her amazing accomplishments. I will tell you that she is the co-founder and CEO of an organization called Rising Tide Capital, and I'm sure she's going to tell us about that. I just want to share one quick anecdote. I came across this video of Alfa where she was receiving, or I should say being honored as one of the CNN heroes. And this took place at the White House. And President Obama was recognizing the fantastic work and applauding what Alfa had accomplished with Rising Tide Capital. And he said, he announced her, and he said, "Oh, by the way, did I pronounce that correctly?" And she sort of nodded her head, I think sort of disbelief that the president's talking to me right now. And he said, "Well, my name being Barack Obama, I'm really sensitive to having people pronounce your name correctly." And afterwards, Alfa was being interviewed on CNN, and she had a smile that was like, a mile wide. And she just said, "This has been a surrealistic experience." So I think you're going to hear something really profound about how, again, an idea can create great change in a community. So let's hear it for Alfa.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'm a huge fan of TED, and I'm glad that TEDx is here in New Jersey, and we can get to share these wonderful ideas. I've enjoyed listening to the previous presenters, and I was in particular, as you can imagine, touched by Sam's talk, because that is exactly what I do. The ideas that Sam and Dr. Yunus had did actually inspire me enough to walk out, almost as if you guys walked out of this room and said, "You're going to go and give it a shot. You're going to go and see if you can do what Dr. Yunus did in your local community." So my name is Alfa Demmellash. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of how I did arrive to this notion of microfinance. I was originally born in Ethiopia, which is right there in the middle. My mom was a refugee when I was 2 years old. She had to leave because there was tremendous unrest and a lot of violence as a result of a dictatorship. And so she handed me over to my grandparents and literally could not look back. She had to keep walking to Kenya, where she was a refugee for 2 years. So during that time, I got to see a lot of trouble and violence and poverty, and was perpetually asking myself, why does it have to be so miserable? But I was also young, and so I didn't really realize necessarily the situations that I was in. As long as I had family and friends around me, I thought that was pretty good. But then after 10 years, so my mom comes to this country, this wonderful country that we call America, and she works really, really hard. So she gets a waitressing job. She wakes up at 4 in the morning. She goes to work. She comes back home at 2 o'clock, and she starts making these beautiful gowns that she would sell to her friends and her community, her church community, and she would save. And she saved and saved and saved. And in this country, if you are trying to make it on just the waitressing job, it can be really hard. So it took her a long time. So after 10 years of saving, she was able to bring me to this country. And as you will see, she made a matching gown for us as soon as I arrived, and and took us to a photographer and had a professional shot of us, and then educated me. So gave me the opportunity to go to a great university. I went to Harvard. And while I was at Harvard, I was constantly noodling on this idea of why did it have to be so bad? And the world, it has such incredible gifts and the ability for humanity to do amazing things. I mean, when I came here, I was like, wow, look at the roads, and every immigrant's experience, I'm sure, but it's like anything is possible. So I really had that feeling. And then when I was at Harvard, I learned about Rwanda. And Rwanda kind of like knocked me off my seat, because I was like, whoa, genocide at this scale could be happening, and we can't do anything about it still? Like, how is that possible? So I was really, really touched. My professor said, never mind about that. Like, you're going to have to go there to learn about it. So I went, of course, immediately, and spent a few weeks learning about the country and interviewing a lot of people and trying to understand where does this violence come from, really out of a sense of deep yearning for peace. And while I was in Rwanda, I was sitting on top of one of the many, many hills that they have, very beautiful country. And I said, wow, like, where is this? It's a very complicated story, but how would I, someone who has, nothing other than this passion and interest, how would I be able to make a difference? How could I stop genocide? That's clearly not possible. But one thing that hit me was that at the end of the day, economics plays such a huge role, that the lack of resources does play a huge role in whether or not we do get to have peaceful societies. Because people who are under-resourced and people who are trying to make ends meet and who don't feel like they can be productively engaged in the world tend to resort to violence and hopelessness. And so I wasn't an economist. I was a government major. And I said, well, I have to learn about this. And that's when I started discovering the work of Dr. Muhammad Yunus. And that's me and him right there. He's like my huge hero. I love him. So I was reading about Dr. Yunus's work, and doing it in conversation with a really great human being. That's Alex Forster right there. He's my co-founder and my husband, and you guys actually get to meet him. He's here today. So we had these great conversations about, how do we take something that Dr. Yunus had talked about, take the reality of the world, which is can be so violent, and be able to do something meaningful. And how can we follow in the tracks as the next generation of great social entrepreneurs like Muhammad Yunus and Sam. And so the things that my mom and Dr. Yunus taught me was that start where you are and start small. And then, follow your heart, and it will lead you to the right places. So we said, well, we're in the United States. Alex's parents are from New Jersey. They do have an excellent basement as well as a full fridge. So as soon as we graduated, we just followed the cheese like mice and landed right there, and probably wore out a bunch of couches they had doing research and going out and meeting people and talking to everyone in New Jersey to find out where is poverty. Because if you're in Princeton and you're looking around, you're like, oh, it looks pretty good, everything is fine, everybody go back home and watch American Idol. But the reality is that there are places like Camden and Newark and Trenton and Jersey City where we are, where there is tremendous suffering. And in fact, during our research and conversation and listening, there are over 24 million adults who live below the poverty line in the US. And poverty in America is a strange thing, because if you go to Ethiopia or Rwanda, the streets of Kigali, you would be able to see poverty and be touched by it immediately. It's not like you can avoid it. In this country, it's remarkably isolating. In this country, you could not have enough to eat, and you look like everybody. You look like the guy who has probably multi-million dollars in his account. So there's something really isolating about it. At the same time, this is the country where we feel like anything is possible, that we can go out and do anything using our talents, our skills, that this is what this country is built on. So there's this tremendous sense of possibility, but a lot of people who are struggling to make ends meet and not really sure about how they would go about doing that. And so in our research and figuring out where are we going to do this, where is going to be our backyard, like Dr. Yunus had his backyard, where are we going to walk out to? So we picked Jersey City, and a little bit, there's a selfish aspect that it's close to New York City. We're still young. We still want to go out and have fun times and then go back in and go to these dark purpley areas where there is a lot of poverty, unfortunately, and double-digit poverty, where there are families who are struggling to make ends meet. Cost of living there is really high. And so we said, where do we begin? And I don't know if you've been on Martin Luther King in any city, unfortunately, in America, but here in Jersey City, it's a particularly distressed area. There are over 42 gangs there. There's major crime issues and whatnot. So we went there and started listening to people, started saying, how could we be of service? And we were really compelled by this redemptive microfinance notion, this redemptive go out there and see if you can be of use in one person's life. And maybe, we have our computers, we have our ability to crunch numbers, we have our ability to do research. So if we're sitting next to someone who's like my mom and said, maybe I could help you figure out how to price your dresses, or maybe I could, do a little bit of research to find out what other shops are doing and maybe connect you. And so we moved over to Jersey City. And when we talk about urban entrepreneurship, I always like to clarify, because there is a sense of that it's about the 42 gangs and what they're up to and how they make money. And, it's not that kind of entrepreneurship. We're talking about these kinds of people. And as soon as we started, we were going to people's kitchen tables at night and the local cafes and really just listening and taking our lead from them, and realized all of a sudden that we had 30 people that we were working with. We didn't have a structure. We didn't have a strategic plan. We had Alex's wonderful parents who'd agreed to be on the board of this thing, and they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And so we finally shaped a program around it and said, look, there are 24 million micro-entrepreneurs in the U.S. There are over 700,000 just in New Jersey. And where we are in Jersey City, there are over 40,000 who would be interested in help so that they can get their dreams up and running. And so we're like, let's make ourselves available and see what happens. So one thing that we immediately realized is that although we were incredibly passionate about microfinance, and in fact we had made our first microloan having cobbled together his and my savings, which totaled $2,000, and gave it to this individual who is a computer repairman. And he had a contract, but he was waiting to save this $1,000 before he could go to this client. So we said, let's try that out. And in the process of doing that, he paid us back, and it was with affordable interest. But we did so much hand-holding. We realized, this guy didn't have a contract. This guy didn't know whether once he'd made that sale that he could continue to make other sales. And when his client refused to pay him, he didn't know how to write a collections letter or how to approach them. And it was just this utter isolation and feeling, especially if you're coming out of our, we talk about this all the time, our failed educational system, then you are really not in a good situation. So we did a lot of work with this person that was not about the money at all. It was so much about actually giving him the tools and the skills that we knew that once we'd gotten our $1,000, that he can continue to use this ad infinitum and make himself a successful business owner. And so we said, it's not just about the money, and especially in the US, it's not about access to credit. In fact, the average microloan in the United States is about $7,000. And if you're a working mom or you're doing something extra on the side, the thought of, first you have to write a business plan still to get access to that. And a lot of microlenders in the US will demand a cosigner or some kind of collateral. So the thought of going in and getting $7,000 is very, very intimidating as a loan that you have to pay back from your sales. And so often people will just use their credit cards or just remain isolated. So our thing was to say, come on out, let's talk about the knowledge capital that you need, the social capital that is essential to get you out of your isolation, and then the financial capital when you're ready. No pressure. We partner now with microlenders, and so we started working with these incredible, and it's like we have a mobile educational unit that we call the Community Business Academy, and started running into hundreds of entrepreneurs. And so it all really started with this question of what if? What if we assist talented individuals with an entrepreneurial dream, people like my mom, to build strong businesses that transform their lives, that strengthen families, and create vibrant, sustainable neighborhoods? What if? And I would encourage you guys to ask that question anytime that you are afraid of an idea that is maybe emerging in your head. What if? And the what if has been unleashing the power of our local entrepreneurs. It's been, since we actually officially launched our core training program, we call the Community Business Academy, we've had over 300 successful graduates. And they, more than just the actual educational component, we've seen them connect with one another in such a way they sell to one another. They have great friends. they launch little associations of whatever they want to do, their little tribes. And so it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. And we've gotten to touch so many of them. And there are thousands more. And we know that, especially for the struggling urban communities where there seems to be so much economic hopelessness, that there really is the possibility for engaging with individuals who want to be creators of their own destiny and who want to go out there and participate and make themselves a seat at the economic table. And we can help, which is a very rewarding experience. So I kind of want to tell you about a couple of individuals and then and maybe leave you with a thought or two. But this is Terrence Beal. He's the CEO of TJB Trucking. When he first came to the class, he would work all night at a recycling plant. He had a very rough background and had gone to prison, had come out. He wanted to change his life. He had no one who believed in him. So he came into the class, and he had a parole bracelet when he would come into the class, and worked through and then spent 2 years, and he would call in and check in every time. And we were not his parole officers, but he would still check in. We're like his, his business partners in this dream, his dream partners. And so he cleaned up his credit, he got on-the-job experience, and then he bought his truck. And a month later, he was able to show up with his truck and his license, which is impossible to get, especially if you have a record. And so he had overcome a huge personal, something that he didn't think was possible. And he is, one of the people that we hold up in front of us when we know that what we're doing is actually really, really meaningful. And there's Angela Fitch, who is a CEO of Freedom from Frenzy, and she's got a computer repair program. She is a mom of 2 children. One of them is actually has a serious illness, and the other she's trying to keep off the streets. And she's been doing this on and off to supplement her income from another job for about 15 years. And when she came to us, she's like, she didn't have a brochure, even though she knew how to build websites. She didn't build her website. She didn't have a card. She really didn't have the confidence. She didn't even consider herself a business owner. It was just a way to make ends meet when there's not enough food in the fridge. And so we worked with her, and she now has her pricing right. She has her brochures. She has confidence. She has her business cards, and she's ready to go out into the world and really just get her dream going. And she says, thank you for letting me have the opportunity to leave a legacy for my kids and to set an example. So there have been hundreds that have come into our lives, and it has been an incredibly rewarding journey. At the same time, it's very, very, very difficult and very trying. But not as trying as Route 1 traffic, so everything is okay. And so there is definitely the ups and downs, and there have been a couple of thoughts that sustain Alex and I as we do this. And that's something that Alex's dad, actually, my father-in-law, who said to me and Alex, you may never get to see the banks of the river you are nourishing. And that was so important because being young and impatient and wanting things to happen very quickly in the lives of adults who are grappling so many things, it was so important to hear, do what you love and contribute, but it's okay if you don't see the results tomorrow. And I think that is such an important thing to consider as social entrepreneurs, as budding social entrepreneurs, because oftentimes we can get trapped in thinking, I have to have results, I have to have immediate gratification, or I need to show the world that I'm having results now. But that's not what this is about. This is a really long-term engagement. And changing the world is worth it, worth the wait. So take your initiatives and put them out there, even if you don't see the results tomorrow. And Alex, while we were in school, he was a postmodern theology and philosophy major, so neither one of us are ec majors. So he had arrived after his years of exploration and thinking that truth is what you do, not just what you know. And I think that's a really powerful concept that has kept us doing what we do every day, and that wakes us up in the morning even when we want to sleep in because we want to do this. We want to live out our truths, and life is not guaranteed to any of us ad infinitum, so we must engage with the world and live out our truths. And so that is what I would like to end with. What is your truth? And when you find it, hang on to it and don't let it go for anything. Thank you.